Hey guys, it's Brigitte and welcome to our November garden tour. I'm going to be talking about what we're growing, what we're not growing, struggles that we're having right now, and just give you a tour of what our garden looks like. Before I do that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put out a video. Okay, so I'm talking about November. So November is such an interesting time in Southern California in zone 9 and 10 because this morning it was totally chilly and I had my little sweater on, and now the sun's coming out and it's getting really hot. It might get up to 80 degrees today, and we're in November. If you are a transplant from a different part of the United States and you just moved to Southern California or zone 9 and 10, you're probably thinking, what in the hell? This is really weird. Wait, I shouldn't curse on the video. Oops, but take that out. I'll say what the heck. You're probably thinking, what the heck? It's like really warm and it's November. Well, that's one thing that is very interesting about growing here is our falls can be very warm and they can almost be like an extended summer in some senses. But it's important to remember that there's a time and place for every crop, and when crops are done, you gotta pull them out. Here's a good example. So this is a seed production field of some zinnias that we have. We've been harvesting seed off of them for months now, and they're really done. Even though some of the plants are still blooming, they have powdery mildew. They're really not looking good, and I don't want to keep them in the garden for several reasons. Reason number one, well, they have powdery mildew, and this is just going to spread to another part of the garden. Number two, they're never going to get any better looking because the days are getting shorter, the nighttime temperatures are getting cooler, and they're out of season. These are a summer crop, so they need to get pulled out. Now, in contrast, you can see over here, these onions look amazing and they're really thriving because we're heading into cooler temperature, we're getting rainfall. This is a cool season crop that's doing really good. So this is a great view of how things look depending on if they're growing in their season, like these onions, or out of their season, like these zinnias. So I have a lot of work to do. I need to rip this all out and get this whole field ready, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now. Let's go check out the rest of my garden and I can show you all the things I've been working so hard on as we revamp the garden, add new compost, new mulch, weed cloth, all the things that we're doing to try to improve the garden for next spring. Ladies! So, oh, you're so wrong. All good. If you're taking a look at my garden right now, you're probably thinking, what is going on? Did she give up on gardening? No, I have not. This is just what it looks like as we're in the middle of a very big gardening revamp. So one of the things that we struggle with the worst here is weeds. And that's because we're an organic farm. I absolutely refuse to use any herbicide on our farm. We hand pull all of our weeds. And we have three of some of the worst weeds. We have Bermuda, we have nutsedge, and we have purslane. Two really terrible weeds to have in your garden. The only way you can get rid of them is by pulling, and also by using methods that slow their growth. So one of the things that we've been doing is putting down a weed barrier that's actually gonna hold the weeds at bay and make it a little bit easier for me so that when I do come out into the garden, I'm not spending as much time weeding and I'm spending a little bit more time enjoying being in this beautiful sacred space that we have created. So we are ripping out all of the crops and we're putting weed cloth down. We're doing a total revamp and getting as much of the Bermuda out as possible. It definitely really took over the summer while we were spending a lot of time at the farm. And unfortunately, now we're paying for that. So we got to get rid of it. So this area you can tell we haven't even gotten to yet. We will. The other thing that I'm doing, I'm taking advantage of the fact that we're ripping everything out to revamp some of our irrigation. So I'm replacing broken irrigation lines. I am just ensuring that our watering system is spot on for this spring. We have some really cool plans for what we're gonna plant, and I wanna make sure it's running as best and as perfectly as possible. So now that we don't have a lot of things growing right now, it's a really good time to go through and really look at every single thing and make sure it's running. So you can see here, I've got really nothing, and that's okay. Keep in mind that your garden doesn't have to be filled with something all of the time. Actually, letting your garden go fallow for a little bit is a really great regenerative practice to ensure that the soil is revamping and recharging from all of the growing that it has been doing. So we actually We started over here, and I've been working row by row by row to plant all the way until I get to the back. And what is actually beautiful and very full circle is that when we first moved into this property, that's actually what we did. The very first row that I planted was the row closest to the house, and then I continued to expand and move and move and move, and I'm doing it all over again almost 7 years later after we moved into this property to revamp and redo it. And even though I was really sad to pull out a lot of beautiful crops, I was also very happy to have a blank slate to start over and to really have control of the garden again. Because we do so much seed production here, we can have so many volunteers that just grow and grow like crazy, and they take over areas that I didn't want them to take over. And so now I have a little more control over what I'm gonna plant and what I want to enjoy. You can see that I've got my cool season crops, so I've got lettuces, I've got cabbages, bok choy, and of course I have interplanted tons of flowers, cosmos, marigolds, some of my favorite. I still have volunteer milkweed that's popping up from previous years. I have direct sowed spinach, and of course I have my sweet pea babies underneath there. So those guys are gonna, they're actually really taking off in the last couple weeks. I'm hoping that they take over this whole little trellis here. That's the plan. So this time in the garden for me is really a time when I'm reflecting, I'm recreating, I'm revamping, and it's since we're in November now, it's really a time of the year when the days are getting shorter, and the time that I get to spend in the garden is shortened quite a bit because the days are shorter. So what I'm focusing on is getting ready for spring, making infrastructure changes, laying mulch, laying compost, fertilizing if I need to, trimming back perennial plants that have gone awry and just taken over. I'm really doing all of the things that I will have no time to do in the spring. Now, let's say you've never grown a garden before and you're just getting into it in November here in zone 9 and 10. What do you want to do? What do you want to plant? Well, a couple things to remember. One, it's fall going into winter, which means the days are going to get very short, which means plants are going to grow very slowly. That's okay, that's not a problem. It's just something to remember. It's not you, it's the amount of hours of sunlight that the plant is exposed to that is allowing it to grow very slowly. You want to plant things like all of your cool season crops. So those are your leafy greens, your kale, your cabbage, your broccoli, your cauliflower, all of your root crops. So radishes, beets, carrots, those grow really well this time of year. And if you are very inexperienced, you can try direct sowing by checking out all of our cool direct sowing videos, or purchasing transplants that you transplant out into the garden. And the other thing to remember is, of course, we're supposed to get seasonal rains, but we probably won't get as much as we're supposed to. And so you have to stay on top of watering and ensuring that there's moisture in the soil so that your plants can thrive. Those are really the top things that you have to remember as a brand new gardener if you're growing or starting a garden in zone 9 and 10 in November.